This is a production of Cornell University.
Good. Okay, I'm Natalie. I'm one of the organizers of DPW, and we're here, obviously, to talk about interviews. You have interviews this afternoon. They are mock interviews, but we're going to give you tips on how to actually do this when you get into this grad school application and the entire process. But you can see there's a lot of people at the front of the room. So I'm Natalie. As I said, I'm in ecology and evolutionary biology, and all these nice folks are going to introduce themselves also. Do you want to go?
Hi, I'm Janani, and I'm a first-year Ph.D. student in soil and crop sciences.
Hi, I'm Cass, and I'm a second-year Ph.D. student in entomology.
I'm Jenny. I'm also a second-year Ph.D. student in ecology and evolutionary biology.
I'm Eugene. I'm a second-year Ph.D. in soil and crop science.
I'm Lizzie, and I'm a third-year Ph.D. student in ecology and evolutionary biology.
Hi, everyone. Probably introduced myself several times at this point, but I'm John, and I'm a third year in entomology, Ph.D.
Thank you all. So all of these people are going to be helping today. We're going to do some practice of what it actually looks like to interview, and we're going to hear about what a real interview when you get to grad school looks like. So as a reminder, we've talked about the fact that you're having interviews later today. Don't stress too much about them. They're practice. You're not expected to know all the information about the people that you're interviewing with. We're not judging you in any way. It's practice. But today we're going to talk about what can help you in the next interviews that you'll go to. So as I said, we're going over a couple different things. We're explaining what actually happens in a grad school interview. How is it different from other job interviews that you might know of? Because it is. It's a very different thing than a job interview. We'll give you a tool for what you might use when you sit down at the beginning of that interview and you're like, oh God, what am I going to do? What do I say? How do I start? We'll give you one tool that you can use to start. And then we'll go over some questions that you might want to ask in interviews. That's a big component of it, where people want you to ask questions. They want to get to know you. They want to make sure that you know what you need to know for that program. So you've heard this many times already, but we're here as a resource. We want you to ask questions. There's going to be time for small group discussions today in this workshop where you can ask anything you want to know about interviewing. Save the other questions for the other workshops because you'll get so much more information. Okay, so this is a cute picture I found. But basically, we talked about an interview. Often they're like 30 minutes. You get in there and you're like, what am I going to talk about now? And you start with introducing yourself. That we're calling an elevator pitch. It's just a quick sort of summary. Who are you? What do you do? What are you excited about? Then you're going to go with this like feedback back and forth. You're going to ask questions. They're going to ask questions. What are those questions? You'll find out in a little bit. So when you're in that, that discussion, that interview where you're assessing the program, the school, you're also figuring out whether you're a good match with that person. So a big point of grad school is you want to be happy. You want to make sure that you get along with a person that you would work with. And that's the interview, is the time where you're face to face. You can really figure out, do our personalities match? Do I like this person? Could I work with them? So ask the questions that you need to know to answer that. And you also want to know, obviously, about the science. Is that research topic that you're interested in really engaging and active in that school, in that program, and in that lab? I know I'm going quickly through this. I'm a little excited. Some of you might be excited also. But we will get into this more as we go on. So I'm going to turn it over to Janani, who's going to talk about what faculty expect.
So, hey again. I just thought I'd go over really quickly the expectations that faculty have from interviews, which is kind of this golden black box question that I think we don't really know the answer to. At least I didn't know the answers to when I was interviewing for grad school. So we did the best thing that we could think of, and we went directly to the faculty themselves. And we sent out a survey with these questions. What do you expect? The students are planning to be in your lab. What do you expect them to have done when they want to be in your department? What kind of skills or personality traits do you expect them to display during interviews? So interestingly, most faculty do not expect you to have published papers in that field or to have done any amount of extensive research work in that field. What they do expect, and this is for faculty whose labs you're applying to be in, they do expect you to have read their research website and be generally familiar with the area in which they work. And let's keep in mind that this is for when you're actually interviewing in grad school, not for the mock interviews that you will be having later today afternoon. So there's no need to go over faculty websites who we will be interviewing with today. That's unnecessary. But in the future, that's a good tip. So this changes a little bit when we ask them, okay, so what about someone who's applying to be in your department, but who doesn't necessarily want to work in your lab? How do your expectations change in that case? And so it's still consistent. People do expect that you've looked over their website, that you kind of know what's going on in the field, that you know the latest kind of happenings in the field. But again, nobody expects you to have read their papers, nobody expects you to have worked in that field. But very important, again, ask questions, ask as many questions as you can think of, ask as many questions as you would like. People expect you to be curious. People expect you to be interested in what their labs are doing, their programs are doing, their department is doing. So that's key. Even if you're not necessarily interested in that person's work, ask questions. Use that opportunity to gain more knowledge. So this is what faculty had to say about what they expect students interviewing with them to be like. So what skills can you cultivate, or what qualities can you practice so that you can kind of deliver on these expectations? So from the same survey, these are kind of the broad areas, and the percentages here are basically the number of faculty who said they would expect to see their students display these qualities. So what was exciting to me here was that qualities like intelligence, excitement, ability to talk about your research interests, these were more important than things like your GPA, your grades, and your test scores, which I personally think is very promising, because as a graduate student, qualities like hard work and perseverance, and this comes in a little bit later. So qualities like hard work and perseverance, I think, are way more important than this academic stereotype of someone who's sitting in their ivory tower who comes up with these brilliant ideas. What's also interesting is that a lot of faculty mention contribution to diversity and creating an inclusive environment as important factors in hiring students and interviewing students. So that being said, a word of caution, faculty may not always understand the place you're coming from, and there could be instances in grad school interviews where you may be asked inappropriate questions or incorrect assumptions may be made about you. So there's a host of different ways to deal with this, and we could maybe talk about this a little bit more during the debriefing or the question answer session. But if you do have those questions or concerns, again, feel free to reach out. We've all been there. We've all heard those questions, and we're happy to talk to you about our strategies to deal with those situations. So we've emphasized the importance of asking questions, of being curious. So what we did, and you should see these in the handouts that Natalie just passed on, we've kind of compiled a bunch of different questions that we think are really useful when it comes to interviews, things that you should feel free to ask faculty about. Say, if you find yourself stressing out, you're panicking, you can't really think of anything off the top of your head, there's a list of questions ready for you. And to make it kind of easier to process, we broke them down into 3 big areas. Questions about the program, questions about resources that are available to you as a graduate student, and then questions about your social life, because this is an often overlooked aspect of grad school, because you're going to be spending 2 years or 5 years or 6 years in this place, and you need to survive. You need to have a social network. So you will find more information on this in the handout, really, but very quickly. So in terms of the program, you can definitely ask faculty about their opinions about the program. How do they think it's changed since they joined the program? Where do they think it's heading? What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses of the program? Resources, talk about professional development opportunities. Do students go to conferences? Do students get trained on presentation skills, on grant writing skills? How active are students in leadership and governance? All of these are important questions. how does funding work in the department? Because different universities, different programs have very different funding situations. Some departments might expect you to teach for a certain number of semesters or years, some might not. So it's important to ask those questions to know where your funding is coming from. And I think we're often hesitant as graduate students because we feel like we don't have that position of power to ask these questions, but it's really important to do that. Same thing about how long do students take to get their PhD or to get their master's in this department? And is that timeline something you are personally comfortable with? Social life, I would say read the room in terms of faculty interviews. Some of these questions may be appropriate to ask during interviews, some may not. Maybe these will be more appropriate during social events or when you're talking to graduate students. But you can definitely ask about the Graduate Student Association. How active is it? How much will you get to know about your cohort, about the people you are in this program with? What about lab meetings? What's the lab atmosphere like? What's the lab atmosphere like? What's the lab culture like? Cost of living in that place. So we've asked about funding situation already. How far will your stipend take you? Are you going to be able to afford rent? Are you going to be able to eat out once in a while? All of these are great questions. Please don't hesitate to ask them. And if you have any other questions that you're not sure if they're appropriate or not, once again, talk to us. We can figure it out. Now I'm going to hand it back to Natalie so we can get started on your elevator pitches.
So, this one. When you walk into the room, this might be the question you get. It's not a question. It's just tell me about yourself. And you might be like, oh God, like what do I do with that? And because all of us feel that, literally everyone standing in front of the room has been in that position, we're gonna model what it might look like for you. We're actually gonna wait on passing out the tool until after we model in the interest of time. But we're gonna turn it over to these fine people to show you some examples of what it might look like. We've already said this. This is gonna be okay. You can do it. For me, the hardest thing, even standing in front of this room, is relaxing enough not to just like bounce all over the place. So you're gonna be fine. You probably already know that. I need to tell myself that sometimes. Maybe you do too. So we're gonna go over this in just a minute and you'll get more information after we practice. But basically, in an elevator pitch like this, you wanna talk about what you're doing now, the present, what you've done that led you to that point, the past, and what you want to do, the future. You're gonna get all of this in a handout with more information about what might fit into each of these categories. But it's important here, you notice like you're a person with a whole history. And really what they wanna know in that interview is what's your history? What do you want to do moving forward? So your future should connect to the experiences that you are doing right now and that you've done previously. Anitra talked a lot about research experiences and things that will help you to sort of bolster your own past to prepare you for grad school. So this is where you actually share it one-on-one in person. Okay, we're gonna come back to that in a second. First though, I'm gonna ask these people, wonderful people, to model what an interview might look like. Eugene, who introduced himself, is going to play the role of a professor. Watch Eugene, it'll be fun. And then 3 of these folks are gonna show you different elevator pitches. So I'm gonna call on John first. And Eugene and John are gonna give you this really, really quick elevator pitch. It's gonna be 1 minute, I'm gonna cut them off. That's gonna be fun for everyone. So, yeah. Okay.
So my name's John, and I'm like a student at Cornell. And I'm like really passionate about insects. I'm doing my major, in entomology, and it's great. I like get to see bugs, and like I work with fruit flies, and they're like really cool because you can do a lot of like really cool genetic stuff with them. But like what I'm really actually interested in are their microbes. I think their microbes are fascinating. Microbes do so many cool things in insects. Like there are way cooler things that like, I mean, I just, you know, there are these ants. They're amazing. Like they farm. I was,
Wait,
you know, I was
wait, what?
Okay, so these ants, they're amazing. They farm this fungus, and they're called leafcutter ants. They're really cool. I don't do any research on them, but like I took a class and I learned a lot about them. I'm like, sometimes I feel like I'm an expert.
Okay. Thank you. That is one example. We're going to talk about these all, but we're going to go through them in this rapid fire fashion. John Wayne, we'll talk about that. Cass, your turn.
Hello.
Ready?
Hi, I'm Cass. Oh, you know what? Sorry, I was actually out doing field work yesterday. I'm covered in paint. I'm so sorry. I'm working on collecting bees right now in this like weird way. I'm using bee bowls. It's like anyway. Hi, I'm Cass, and I'm really excited about bees and networks. So I'm really interested both in like the theoretical side.
So wait, just go back a second. Where are you coming here from? I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, I'm so sorry. So I did my master's in a forestry school, and I was in Connecticut, and then before that, I was an undergrad. I did
So are
Ecology
you
and
familiar
Evolutionary.
with the work of Dr. Janani? I know a big forestry name, and she does a lot of work in forests and nutrient cycling and
Oh,
stuff
gosh.
like that.
I don't think so. No. Where is she based?
At the SUNY Forestry School in Syracuse.
Oh, okay, cool. I would love to meet her. That would be.
Yeah.
That's an example. We are like so quick on time. Cass, don't forget, gonna talk about that too. Jenny, your turn.
Hi, I'm Jenny Yuling.
Nice to meet you.
And so I'm really interested in birds, and I've loved them since I was about 10 years old, but I became interested in them in an ecology and evolutionary biology perspective when I was starting as an undergraduate at the University of Chicago. So there I worked on understanding the distribution of non-native parrots in the US, and doing that I used species distribution modeling to understand what environmental factors influence distribution. So I really loved that work, and I loved thinking about birds in a wide geographic distribution manner. But one aspect that was kind of missing for me there was understanding how their movement is influencing their distribution. So for my PhD work, I'm really interested in focusing on movement and spatial ecology of birds. I'm also really interested in migration. I think it's the coolest thing. And so I'd love to focus on how birds make decisions about movement and route as they're migrating. Currently, I'm doing a gap year, so I've been learning all of these different techniques in ornithology, including banding and bleeding, as well as different molecular techniques. So I'm really excited to apply some of those techniques to my PhD, as well as to continue doing some modeling.
Great, it sounds like you're pretty well prepared. I'd like to talk a little bit more about some of this stuff.
Thanks.
Thank you all. Okay, so what did you think? What varied? What varied between those three examples? Yes, preparation. Yeah. That's pretty apparent. Yeah. What else? So preparation varied. What did you think was good? Yeah. Cool. So yeah, knowing what the context of that research is, what does it matter? Yeah. Yes, organizing in a logical way. That's hard to do on your feet, but yeah, it matters. Any other things, like specifics of those? Yeah. Cool, yeah. So when you're talking, it's not just you're talking to anybody, you're talking specifically to someone that you want to work with or for. And then you really want to make sure you're telling them why you're so excited about working with them or why you're a good fit. Great. Other things that people noticed. Was there anything that you're like, I think I might do that in an interview? Maybe. Okay, so I do this, obviously, like you can tell I'm like a little crazy sometimes. And so I walk in and I'm like, oh God, birds, they're so cool. I'm just like really excited about them. And people are like, yeah, okay, great. But the reality is that a lot of us end up interviewing for grad school because we're passionate, because you are enthusiastic. So you notice when Jenny talked about her research, she still was like, migration's so cool. It's just the coolest. And that's great. You want to be authentic to who you are. So not all of us are like crazy bouncy balls. Some of us, like, personality varies. So that's why I'm weird and I'm up at this front of the room and like get really excitable. Not all of us are that way. You don't have to be any particular way when you're interviewing. People are not judging you based on how you perform as a person or something like that. They are looking for who you are in reality. So whatever that is, do it. You know yourself best, and you know how you want to interact with other people and how you want to build that relationship, because that's what you're doing, is you're figuring out if you're a good match with these people. Okay, there's more to talk about. We're going to debrief in small groups, but to give you all sort of some tools, as we talked about, for doing your own elevator pitches, Janani has handed out this present, past, future formula. It's a formula. It's simplistic, but it helps you to sort of think about what you might include in that introduction in the interview. So we're going to give you 5-ish minutes. And as you look at this sheet, you see on the front side of it, I don't know, the front side of it has a lot of questions that might relate to your present, your past. And on the back side, there's a blank. This is a gimmicky thing, but to help you prep for your elevator pitch for grad school, we're going to give you a few minutes to jot down some experiences that fit into present, past, and future, and what narrative might tie all of those together. The reason you're doing this now is that you're going to practice these pitches, rapid fire. Not stressful, probably stressful, hopefully not too crazy. So take just a few minutes. This is for your use, nobody's looking at it. Write something if you want to, but start thinking about what your pitch might be, and then we're gonna actually do them. You're gonna pair off, and we'll do them in a second. Okay. Something that you thought was really helpful to hear in this debrief, or something that you're still concerned about. And so let's start this table. One of you can use the mic, elect someone.
Yeah, no, I thought I would amplify that, yeah. The takeaway I had, one of the takeaways, I mean, there's several, was that you have to remember that you may be really passionate about stuff, but you're also, like, being interviewed alongside other people who are also very passionate about stuff. So you have to think, how do I express it in a way that puts me, makes me stand out from the pack?
Well, that's a fantastic point. So a lot of us are really reactive. So thinking about what's special about you and your experience can be scary. Can be scary, but finding that thing that's like, that you care most about. One of the tables we were talking about, the thing that gets you like really going, where you're like, yes, this is what I feel comfortable and good and motivated doing. That's what you should talk about. So yeah, we're passionate about many things, things like that. I'm gonna go to your table. This was the table we talked about that with. One of you want to share?
Yeah, so just kind of going off of what you said, a big concern of mine when I was giving my little speech or spiel or whatever it is, was trying to tie in, things that you're passionate about outside of sciences, outside of research, and what maybe, and how that may have drawn you into research and kind of, pushing you in that direction. And so it's just good to know that they're looking at you. This is a conversation. This isn't, just in what can you bring to this job? What can you bring as a human being, and what kind of aspects to science, or what kind of aspects to yourself can you bring to sort of diversify our science, in this lab?
So I think two of the big takeaways here, one was we were talking a little bit about if you're sort of like jumping from like one system to another, like somebody who was doing more cancer research now wants to talk about plant metabolites. As long as you can explain like why and how it's related. Like myself personally, I was an engineering undergrad, did environmental science, now I'm in agriculture, but it's all like sustainability related. So having sort of like a narrative that makes sense to like explain why you're interested in this stuff, how you've gotten to where you are. Everybody's got different paths, so that's important. One question that I told the group about that I always ask at the end of an interview, and they thought it was all good and wanted me to share with everybody, is I always end it by saying, now that you've had a chance to talk to me, look at my materials and everything, did you have any hesitation to hiring me? And how can I sort of like clarify things or explain things to you so that I can like clear that up? And I think that could be helpful.
We talked about a lot of different things, but I think two main things that stood out were, one was what Eugene just said, that people come with a diversity of experiences and research backgrounds, and how do you kind of tie all of those things into one single narrative, and should you even do that? So how do you kind of visualize your story that way? And the second thing we talked about was, you know, in terms of future plans, how specific should you get? Should you tie yourself down to one particular career, or would the professor feel like you're not a good fit for the lab because you're too specific about things? So up in the air, great questions.
So like going through this, I could just kind of see that graduate school interview is kind of really different from like a work interview. It's very structured differently. So just trying to get like a feel for a middle ground of how much do you say, how do you stay focused on what you're going to say without going or being too broad and rambling. So kind of getting to the point, but also making sure that your point was made.
I think for me personally, it's like sometimes I feel like I went to sleep one day and then woke up where I am. So having to like being able to backtrack and figure out how I actually got here, because especially because I haven't been like invested in the sciences my whole life. I actually was more of like an arts and like an English person. So trying to figure out my story and like the reasons for why I ended up where I am and being able to explain that to somebody else very quickly is a bit of an undertaking. And I definitely think I need to think about that going forward. So.
We talked about a couple strategies as far as keeping calm, keeping your composure during the interview. One of them was having a water bottle. Another one was looking at sign language to, you know, they look calm, so you should be calm. Another one was, you know, having some mnemonic device or some method of figuring out what you're going to talk about, what points you want to hit. And basically the main point was, as long as you keep cool and don't freak out, you'll be all right.
So even if you do freak out, I have freaked out in most interviews I've done, whether it was like through insane excitement or just like horrible nerves. So it's okay. They know that you're interviewing and they know that you're talking to somebody who did this actual interview at some point in their past. They may or may not remember exactly what it was like, but they did it. And you know that they want to know about you. You're there because they wanted to talk to you. So if you can, for me, I always remind myself, I'm like, I'm sitting in this seat because they told me that they wanted to know things about me. I can do this. It's going to be okay. And that self-talk does matter for some more than others. Yeah, this is the time for you to tell someone else what you're most excited about. And you get to ask questions. So I know some of you talked about how do you focus your talk, how do you plan for the future. If you have remaining questions about that, you can find any of the grad students who are here right now, and really anyone else, anybody you want to talk to about that. So you're going to do mock interviews after lunch, but thankfully you have a break now for lunch. They're mock interviews. It's going to be fun. Thank you all very much. We'll see you around this weekend.
This has been a production of Cornell University, on the web at cornell.edu.